This week saw the release of some interesting and partly encouraging economic data. GDP numbers for the last quarter of 2021 came out, and it showed that in the last quarter of the year, which is January to March, the Indian economy had actually expanded by 1.6%. This was a surprise. It was a positive surprise. People didn't expect it to expand by that number. Many people thought that the recovery that we've seen in the third quarter of the year, largely on account of festive demand and pent-up demand, would ease a bit, and that the fourth quarter would see a contraction in GDP again, which would mean that for the entire year, the economy would contract by around 8%. As it turns out, for the entire year, the economy contracted by only 7.3%. I know it might seem rather strange that one is taking cheer from the fact that the economy is contracted by 7.3%, but believe me, it was expected to be much worse. So the fact that it contracted by 7.3% was good. The fact that the economy in the last quarter actually expanded by 1.6% was even better. But unfortunately, the good news stops there, and the reason it stops there is the same problem. It's the second wave of the coronavirus disease. We've written about this extensively. By February, March, the economy's recovery was pretty complete. If you were to look at the Nomura India Business Resumption Index, which looks at the level of activities and compares them to pre-pandemic levels, it was almost back at 99.3, 99.4. And this is an index value, which means things are almost back to 100, which is the base level of activity in February 2020 before the pandemic struck India. So in February and March, things were pretty much back to normal. But then the second wave, which started in late February, gathered momentum in March, and then exploded in April. There's no other way of describing it because its impact on India was extremely severe. As a result, this 1.6% expansion that we saw in the last quarter of the year, which should have translated into a significant expansion in this quarter, because last year in this quarter, we had the lockdown. So there is something called the base effect, which comes into play when you compare the year ago period, or when you compare the corresponding year ago period. So the economy should have done better. And this is clearly evident in data that came out today, on Friday. This is the Reserve Bank of India's data on the economy. The Reserve Bank of India previously expected the Indian economy to grow, to expand by 10.5% in 21-22, which is the financial year that we are currently in. India follows an April 1 to March 31st financial year, March 31 financial year. And even during the second wave, the Reserve Bank of India said that the impact might not be too severe. And there are reasons, we will go into them in a bit. But today's estimate says that the Reserve Bank expects a 1 percentage point drop in GDP. So its new estimate is 9.5%. So rather than seeing the low double-digit kind of expansion that many people expected India to see, we'll now grow at the high single digits. It is good, but it's not great. It means the bounce back, which was supposed to be very sharp, will not be as sharp. Specifically, in this quarter alone, the economy was originally expected to expand by around 25.5% by the Reserve Bank. Now the Reserve Bank says that it will be around 18.5%. Again, it's a good number, but you'll have to understand that last year, this quarter, which is the first quarter, last year's first quarter would have been April to June 2020. That was the period that saw the brunt of the lockdown that we had. It was a hard lockdown. This time, the lockdown wasn't extremely hard when it came to business activities. A lot of manufacturing activities were allowed to continue. And the reason it was allowed to continue this time was because of the bitter experience of last year when people saw the kind of impact that a lockdown had on the economy. And no one wanted a repeat of that, which probably explains why many people expected the second wave to not have as detrimental an impact on the economy as the first wave. but still, I think we are just beginning to see the real impact of the second wave on the economy. It's already become evident in RBI's forecast today. I think it will manifest itself in various other financial parameters and macroeconomic numbers that will come out over the next few months. We also know anecdotally that there were a significant number of deaths through April and May. In May, in fact, India saw the most death that any country has ever seen in the course of the pandemic, well in excess of 100,000. Many of these people were chief wage earners of their respective families. There will be some impact that is felt on the economy, on consumption on account of all this. And I think that is going to be worrying. It could be a lingering effect. So the first quarter of this year is going to be bad. The second quarter of this year should be better. And hopefully, if we get our vaccinations right, we could well escape the third wave, which many people believe is inevitable. I don't think it's as inevitable as that, provided we are sensible about several things. One of the most important things that can help prevent a third wave is vaccinations. Which is why another piece of news that came out in the course of this week is very, very interesting. It's very important. It's very encouraging. One of the things that we noticed during India's vaccine drive, or during the planning that went behind India's vaccine drive, was that we delayed placing orders with companies. Even as late as last year, December, we had not really placed orders with companies. Very, very different from the approach adopted by many other countries, including the US. The US, of course, they had a program which pretty much behaved like a late-stage venture capital fund for vaccine makers, sort of pumping in a lot of risk capital into these companies, because vaccine development at the end of the day is a very risky process. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In fact, the kind of success we've seen with the coronavirus vaccines is unprecedented, and I think it's brilliant, because if it hadn't been as successful, we'd be in a very different place and we'd be having a very different kind of conversation right now. So India did not do any of that. We didn't pump in any risk capital. We didn't place any advance orders. Even the EU placed advanced orders. And I say even the EU because the EU is known to be conservative over these things. The UK placed advance orders. Japan placed advance orders. We didn't really place advance orders. We just sort of assumed that, and I think so, because no one's really come out and said that, but I think our assumption was Serum Institute is an Indian company, so we will have first right on their vaccines, which is actually a pretty strange assumption to make, because that's not how business works. Because companies also have their own contractual commitments, and Serum Institute, as many of us know, has not met some of its contractual commitments to COVAX, which is the free vaccine facility that WHO and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, run for poor countries. But that's a different story. So compared to that, what we did this time was we saw a promising vaccine. It's cleared phase 1 trials and phase 2 trials. The data is still not out, and it should come out, because I think especially in vaccine development, it is very important to be transparent. But this is a vaccine candidate that began its phase 3 trials last month, or its phase 3 trials were approved by India last month. And look, I'm sure that the powers that be must have looked at the phase 1 and phase 2 data, because clearly you look at this data before approving phase 3. And they went ahead and said that this looks to be a promising vaccine candidate. It will probably work. So we might as well place advance orders, which I think is a good move. Because had we placed advance orders even in the first phase of the vaccine drive, I think it would have been, we might have been in a better position than we are in right now. We could have had a better supply of vaccines. Because as we all know, at this point in time, we do have a vaccine crunch. Things are expected to ease later this year. The government itself has given out some estimates on how many vaccines will become available between August and December. It's a slightly optimistic, not a slightly, it is a significantly optimistic estimate of around 2.16 billion. The government has also given a very aggressive estimate of the number of vaccinations that we will carry out. At least two ministers have said this. It's there. It was mentioned before the Supreme Court that the government, that India would start doing 10 million vaccine shots a day, that we would administer 10 million vaccine doses a day. Aggressive number. I think it will be good even if we do 5 million, because the idea is to keep progressing towards vaccinating the entire population. So from that perspective, the fact that we've gone ahead, the fact that we've taken a risk and placed an order for 300 million doses of this new vaccine, which is being developed by Biological E in partnership with Baylor College in Texas, in Houston. I think it's a good move. We should probably look at more promising vaccine candidates and look at companies which have the ability to productionize them significantly. And I mean this, and I say this with a and I say this because it has a lot of implication, especially looking at how Bharat Biotech's own manufacturing has gone. I think the fact that many of the doses that Bharat Biotech was supposed to deliver are still not in, and the company is speaking in terms of a 4-month lag for this, which is curious to say the least, because that is not how manufacturing really works, especially for a product like vaccines. So the fact that we've gone ahead, taken this risk, looked at the science and made an investment, because that is what it is. It's an advance order, and it is a significant advance order for 300 million doses is good. It is something that will help India build its stockpile of vaccines. Extremely critical that the country build its stockpile of vaccines. So how do these two pieces of information add up? I think one feeds into the other. The fact that we are vaccinating more people by the day, the fact that we are building supplies to vaccinate all eligible Indians is probably the best stimulus that you can offer the economy. Sure, you will need a short-term stimulus to boost demand, because that is the big problem that we have right now. Aggregate demand is down. In fact, aggregate demand being down was the problem even before the pandemic set in. And now it's just a problem that's been amplified even more significantly. So you have to have short-term fiscal measures that can do that. But I also think the best investment you can make in the economy, the best stimulus you can offer the economy, is to really vaccinate as many people as you can in the shortest possible time. We are looking at countries that have vaccinated significant populations and seeing the impact it has had on cases, on deaths, and more importantly, on opening up activities. In the US, for instance, the 2021 school term that will start in a few months will probably be entirely physical in many states, because many states have vaccinated in excess of 50% of their population. And I mean 50% of their entire population, not 50% of the adult population. Sure, they just started doing people under the age of 16, because in the US, anyone over 16 was eligible for the dose, just like in India, anyone over 18 is. But I still think they just did so many of the people over 16 that it's 50% of the entire population in many states, and I think that has an impact. There is also a health angle to this. Research which has been carried out in the United Kingdom has shown that as far as the Delta variant of the coronavirus disease is concerned, and this is the variant which was first identified in India, this is the variant which we now know was responsible for the surge in Delhi, according to a research paper that's just come in today, which has already been published. Still not peer-reviewed, but published. And research in the UK has shown that 2 doses of the vaccine are required to get a significant amount of efficacy in dealing with the Delta variant. With 1 dose, both with the Pfizer vaccine and with the AstraZeneca vaccine. And the AstraZeneca vaccine is what is being sold in India as Covishield, which is the Indian version of that, manufactured by Serum Institute. But with both Pfizer and with the AstraZeneca vaccine, with 1 dose, you have an efficacy of 33% against the Delta variant. With 2 doses, for both of them, it goes up. It still comes down around 7-8% from their known efficacy. So in Pfizer's case, it comes down from 95% to around 88%. In AstraZeneca's case, it comes down from 67% to around 59%. But you do need those 2 doses. So it is something that India should focus on doing, cover as many people as possible, give as many people as possible a first dose, vaccinate as many people as possible fully, which means give them 2 doses. You do this, you can avoid the 3rd wave, and you can also make sure that the economy grows.